billed each time you go to the dentist. Continuing childcare that's delivering savings of up to $2,800 per year here in Manitoba per child. These are savings that Manitobans can already expect, largely because the progress that we made in my first 9 days as Prime Minister. But we can accomplish much more if we win this election. And that begins with a middle-class tax cut. On the first day of this campaign, I committed to a middle-class tax cut that will save the average two-income family up to $825 a year. And yesterday, I announced Canada's most ambitious housing plan since the Second World War. It's a plan that has many components, but the bottom line is this. We're going to make Canada the leader in prefabricated and modular housing. We're going to create tens of thousands of new, not just jobs, tens of thousands of new careers in the trades. And we're going to cut the cost of building homes by as much as 20%. We're also slashing development charges which in effect are taxes on home building. We're going to slash those in half. And as I mentioned earlier, we're cutting the GST on homes for up to $1 million for first-time buyers. Ce n'est pas seulement un plan pour faire augmenter l'offre en logement et faire baisser les prix, c'est un vrai plan pour que l'accession à la propriété redevienne possible pour tout le monde. Our plan is making it more affordable for families to purchase a home. For an average family here in Winnipeg, this makes purchasing a condo much more affordable by saving them more than $3,000 on development charges, $7,300 on GST. And with all of these measures, a two-earner family with a child in Winnipeg that has a household income of around $70,000 can expect $15,000, I repeat, in savings. And on top of those savings, with our housing plan, and by building more homes more efficiently through modular and other technologies that could reduce the cost of building homes by up to 20%. This could save another $45,000 for families that purchase these homes here in Winnipeg. This will go a long, long way. Terry said I had a plan. We have a plan, and it's detailed. And we need one because this will go a long way to help Canadians weather the storm intensified by President Trump's tariffs. And this is all before we take the measures that will create higher paying jobs, such as creating one Canadian economy out of 13 that we have today, and measures to diversify our trading partners around the world. Now, Pierre Poilievre doesn't get any of this. He thinks that slash and burn is the answer to every problem. $10 a day childcare, he'll eliminate it. Dental care, he will eliminate it. Il est contre les mesures qui permettent de bâtir plus de logements et faire baisser les prix, comme le fonds pour accélérer la construction de logements. Il va s'en débarrasser. Il refuse de travailler avec les leaders municipaux dont on a besoin pour bâtir plus de logements. Il a dit qu'ils sont incompétents. He's against serious solutions because on every occasion he puts ideology over ideas. He's the type of lifelong politician that worships at the altar of the free market despite never having had to make a payroll. With him, it's everyone for himself. To create prosperity that includes everybody, to create affordability for everyone, we need to all work together. We have to do big things in this country. We have to move forward because we are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our economic destiny. But to do so, we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations. But the bottom line is, we, in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, across Canada, we can give ourselves more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away from us. And that includes, at its core, a better, more affordable life for every Canadian. For generations, Canadians have built this great country on the idea that if you work hard, like the people here at New Flyer, if you work hard, you should be able to afford a good life, a good job that covers the bills, have a good home in a welcoming and safe community. And it's the duty of my government and governments at all levels to make that promise a reality. Under a new Liberal government, we will build a Canada you can afford. We will build an independent future for our country stronger than ever. We will build Canada strong. Thank you very much, and look forward to this question.
All right, we'll be taking 15 minutes of the media delegation's question, starting with Bloomberg.
Hi, Mr. Carney, Brian Platt with Bloomberg. There's been a few reports over the past few days about what the Trump administration may do tomorrow, including the possibility of 20% tariffs on the entire world. Does the government have any communication? Has the government received any communication about what the Trump administration may do tomorrow? What's your own personal expectation?
Thank you for the question. As you know, I spoke with the president last week. We had a very constructive, very productive conversation. Part of that conversation included a commitment, two commitments. The first was that after the election, the Government of Canada and the Government of the United States, the President and the next Prime Minister, which I hope will be me. I'm working hard every day to be that person, but we will sit down. Those individuals will sit down and begin comprehensive negotiations. That's the first thing. The second thing we agreed was that our principals, our ministers, would be in close contact during this period. And that is the case. Minister LeBlanc has been in contact with Secretary Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce Lutnick. That is a regular, ongoing conversation. Ministre Joly avec son homologue dans le cas de M. Rubio. So we're in close contact. We, of course, will be looking with interest what is announced tomorrow. As I also mentioned to the President and was very clear, we will respond to additional measures. So we will put in place retaliatory measures if there are additional measures put against Canada tomorrow. Thank you. En français, c'est quoi? Il y a deux engagements pendant la conversation entre moi et Monsieur le Président Trump. Premièrement, il y aura une négociation globale entre le Canada et les États-Unis après notre élection fédérale. Deuxièmement, nos ministres vont être dans des conversations fréquentes et ouvertes. Et c'est le cas. C'est le cas maintenant avec les conversations entre M. Leblanc et puis M. Joly et leur homologue américain. Et point final, j'ai avisé M. le Président que le Canada va prendre des contre-tarifs s'il y aura d'autres mesures demain, d'autres mesures américaines demain. Okay.
In terms of Canada's response, you've said you're looking at measures, you want to do measures that are minimally impactful on Canadians. But of that list that the Trudeau government released of 155 billion, there's a lot of items on that list that will be quite impactful on Canadians.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, for example, passenger vehicles. A lot of the best-selling vehicles in Canada are made in the U.S. Are you still using that $155 billion list, or do you expect a more narrow response?
Well, Brian, this is a crucial question. And let me say in general, and then I'll give you a couple of quick examples. We are going to be very deliberate in terms of the measures we take to fight for Canada, fight against these unjustified measures by the U.S. administration, but also to protect, to have that minimal impact in Canada. Now, I'm going to use a specific example. Paul and I were discussing earlier today this great company, which produces a number of buses for the United States using, in many cases, U.S. components, and so the need for so-called remission orders around those, so that New Flyer remains competitive and all subsidy remains competitive. That's smart. That's smart from the Canadian perspective, and that's the kind of approach this government is taking. The second thing to say, though, is with respect to the auto sector. Given the current structure of U.S. auto tariffs, we have held back until we see the next measures from the U.S. tomorrow. We have held back. But we will not disadvantage Canadian producers and Canadian workers relative to American workers. So there are measures that we can take that at a minimum level the playing field with the United States. And again, it depends on the broader measures they take tomorrow, if indeed they do against Canada. Thank you.
Next question.
En français, pour tout cela, alors, en ce qui concerne les contre-tarifs, le principe, c'est d'avoir un impact maximal aux États-Unis et un impact minimal ici au Canada. Mais il y a et ça c'est absolument fondamental pour nous. Et notre réponse va être intelligente, je vous assure. Mais il y a des exemples, par exemple les ordres de rémission pour une société, une entreprise comme New Flyer, en ce qui concerne les components, les pièces américaines. Et deuxièmement, en ce qui concerne le secteur automobile, nous allons maintenir, rétablir la concurrence canadienne par rapport aux Américaines qui a été déstabilisée par leurs mesures. Okay.
Morning.
Next question.
Good morning, Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. It appears the involvement of the RCMP forced candidate Paul Cheng to bow out of the race. Meanwhile, the Conservatives just removed their problematic candidate in Windsor within an hour of learning of issues of this individual. Why didn't you do the same with Cheng? And was this a teachable moment for you?
Mr. Cheng made his resignation, offered his resignation last night. I accepted it. As I said yesterday, his comments were deeply troubling and regrettable. We will move on with looking for a new candidate for Markham. And I'll leave it at that. En français? En français, d'accord. Hier soir, j'ai accepté la démission de M. Cheng. Comme je l'ai dit hier, ses commentaires étaient terriblement offensifs. C'est terriblement offensif et on va chercher à partir de maintenant de nouveaux candidats pour Markham Unionville.
How do you reconcile keeping Bill C-69 with your plans to build infrastructure in Canada? Do you plan to repeal Bill C-69?
We do not plan to repeal Bill C-69, to answer your question directly. What we have said and made very clear 10 days ago, formally with the First Minister's meeting, is that we will move for projects of national interest to remove duplication in terms of environmental assessments and other approvals, and we will follow, as the federal government, the principle of one project, one approval to move forward from that. So what's essential is to work at this time of crisis to come together as a nation, all levels of government, to focus on those projects that are going to make material differences to our country, to Canadian workers, and to our future. and work closely together. And the federal government is looking to lead with that by saying we will accept provincial environmental assessments to move forward with that for example, clean energy projects or conventional energy projects. There are many others that could be there. Last point, which in many respects is the first point, we will always ensure that these projects move forward in partnership with First Nations.
Prochaine question.
Oui, bonjour, M. Carney. Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Les Américains voient la loi 96 comme un obstacle au commerce. Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec ça? Est-ce que vous vous engagez à la protéger coûte que coûte dans une négociation avec eux?
OK, merci pour votre question. Soyons clairs. Dès que le début de ma campagne électorale, ma campagne pour la chefferie, j'ai dit jamais nous ne serons jamais des négociations avec les États-Unis au sujet ou des sujets qui impactent la langue française, la culture et la gestion de l'offre. Alors, c'est jamais sur la table.
Juste pour clarifier, vous la protégez coûte que coûte la loi 96. Vous la protégez.
Je vais protéger, oui.
Mais comment est-ce que vous pouvez protéger une loi que vous avez l'intention de contester en Cour suprême?
Il y a plusieurs aspects. OK. Il y a plusieurs aspects de la loi et il y a une question des droits. C'est une question pour des cours, pour des juges. Et c'est une autre question, c'est un autre aspect. C'est les questions des droits fondamentaux ici au Canada. C'est une question à défendre le cas.
Question pour vous?
Prochaine question.
Il n'y a pas de contradiction pour vous?
Il n'y a pas de contradiction. Non, pas de contradiction. C'est la chose fondamentale. Pour moi, la question qui pose maintenant, c'est la négociation avec les États-Unis afin de régler cette crise. Et je suis absolument clair. Jamais la langue française, jamais la culture canadienne, y compris la culture québécoise, et jamais la gestion de l'offre seront sur la table.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. Carney. It's Stuart Thompson from the National Post. On Friday, the Post published a piece revealing 10 instances of plagiarism in your doctoral thesis. Your party responded by attacking the academic who was quoted in the piece. Some of your surrogates mentioned pulling media subsidies because they didn't like the piece. First of all, did you plagiarize? And is this a demeanor we can expect from a Carney government? Will you attack the media when you don't like the work we do?
Thank you for your question. I'm pleased that there's such interest in my doctoral thesis. It's sort of languished on the shelf for over 3 decades. I think what you'll find in the middle of that piece is a very clear refutation of these quote allegations by senior-most academic at Oxford, Dr. Meyer, who was categorical in her rejection of many of the conclusions that you just made. So if your question is, does a professor at Oxford, well, I think the statement of Dr. Meyer stands is pretty obvious where it is, and as I say, I'm pleased that there is intense interest in a game theory thesis of 30-something years ago.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Alessia Pasifumi here with the Canadian Press. Your ministers have been telling me for more than a year that a Poilievre government wouldn't be focused on the issue of reconciliation. Yet you're here in Winnipeg, which is a majorly Indigenous city, with no policy announcement for Indigenous people, no public meetings with them. What does that signal about the Liberal Party's stance on reconciliation with Indigenous people?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I'll say a couple of things, if I may. The first, in my opening comments as Prime Minister on the day that I was sworn in, acknowledged the fundamental role of First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples to the founding of our country. Within 2.5 days, I was in Iqaluit with the Premier and meeting First Nations. the Innu people, sorry, the Innu people and the Métis. Within the first week, I met with all the leaders of the Indigenous organizations. Within the first week, we announced as a government the doubling and the broadening of the Indigenous loan program. So the process of reconciliation, which is fundamental to our country, fundamentally part of our being and essential, must proceed. And we've taken those initial steps. This is a long process, but we've taken those initial steps to move forward. Thank you.
Prochaine question.
Sierra Buttons, ABTN National News. Prime Minister Carney, you've been talking a lot about speeding up mineral extraction and energy projects in your campaign. I'm wondering, how do you plan to square that with First Nations' right to consultation and accommodation?
Thank you very much for this question. I can't stress this enough. This is fundamental. And when I speak of projects of national interest, when I speak of, for example, critical mineral extraction, which is a tremendous opportunity for this country, but can only proceed if there is free, prior, and informed consent. Only proceed, in my judgment, if there's full participation from First Nations groups. And I have, on multiple occasions, unfortunately on multiple occasions, had to remind Mr. Poilievre of that fact. For him, he can fly into Iqaluit without consulting the premiers, without meeting with any First Nation groups, makes an announcement and flies back. For him, he can speak of building an energy corridor or building Energy East as a pipeline without mentioning First Nations. I always have that at the heart. And to make that more concrete and to make that a reality, as I just mentioned, we doubled, I'll round it to that, our Indigenous Loans Guarantees program, which is now $10 billion, which finances, to be clear, these aren't loans, these are loans for full investment participation if those First Nations choose to support a project and wish to be part owners. And we broadened it across from just whatever it was before, last point, from just energy across to a wide range of projects, which would include critical minerals. So it's there, but we're also putting it into action.
Next question.
Sorry.
Glenn McGregor, City News. You mentioned the drop at the pump motorists are experiencing today. Are you convinced that is durable, that oil and gas companies are not going to take advantage of, I don't know if it was in your thesis or not, but inelasticity of the demand for gasoline? Are you concerned about that they may raise their prices again over time to make up for the drop in the carbon tax? And if so, what would you do about that? Well,
Okay, a couple of things. Thanks for raising this. This is incredibly important. That Canadians are seeing that flow through of the drop in the price in the pump. It's important that the Competition Bureau, the competition authorities are very alert to ensuring what you're suggesting might happen or could happen doesn't happen, first point. Second point, we all know through long history that the price of gasoline at the pump also fluctuates with the price of oil around the world. So there will be some fluctuations in and around there. The third point, and I'll hand back to you, Glenn, is that what we said from the start was we will cancel the consumer carbon tax, which I did on my first day as Prime Minister. We recognize that there is also a rebate that comes with that carbon tax that gets people ahead. We kept the rebate in place for this. The rebate checks will show up later this month for people, as usual, even though the carbon tax is not being collected. We kept it in place to help with the transition so that if we are returned to government, our tax cut will be in place, which then more than makes up for the rebate. I'll hand back.
On your affordability theme, you mentioned daycare, you mentioned dental care. I haven't heard you talk about pharmacare, and I know your party was kind of leveraged into this by the NDP. Are you committed, if you form government, to expanding that above and beyond diabetes and birth control medications for people who don't have employer plans or provincial plans?
Committed, absolutely, to keeping what is in place. I think those broader judgments will take place if there were to be an expansion, it's in the context of decisions around a range of priorities, but the core remains on pharmacare and clearly childcare, dental care, the tax cut, the changes I've outlined. And I'm going to underscore one last time, hand to your colleague, the changes in housing. The ambition in housing is enormous, and the changes in housing in terms of the impact of an affordability in a few years will, for those who are buying houses, have the potential to more than triple the impact that's been seen.
We'll take one last question.
Okay.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney, Hélène Moka de la presse canadienne. J'aimerais revenir sur la loi 96 des entreprises américaines qui ont exprimé leur préoccupation face à l'obligation d'avoir à traduire leur marque de commerce, des termes génériques sur leur emballage. Vous venez de dire qu'il n'y aura pas de négociation sur le français et la culture, mais comment s'assurer du respect par les Américains s'ils sentent que vous ferez partie, en quelque sorte, d'une contestation de cette loi?
J'ai beaucoup d'expérience dans les négociations. OK? J'ai beaucoup. Et dans une négociation, si on met des choses à côté, ils sont à côté. Je donne tout le temps cet engagement. Je mets à côté la langue française. Je mets à côté la gestion de l'offre. Je mets à côté la culture. C'est jamais sur la table. C'est comment on fait une négociation. On doit être clair en avance. Je suis absolument clair. À vous, madame.
Donc, vous pouvez donner des garanties que la protection du français sera jamais remise en cause?
Je viens de le dire. C'est un engagement. C'est un engagement personnel. Et c'est très important. Alors, merci pour votre question, mais c'est très important. Mais je suis absolument clair sur cela.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui met fin.
OK, merci.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.
OK, merci beaucoup.